Okay, it's 415-555.
In a bank.
We are bank tellers.
Technological growth, better ways of doing things, and the digital revolution over time have changed the relevance of some jobs. These occupations used to play a role in the everyday routine, however, modern times have tucked them away. In today's video, we'll look at 1980s jobs, once important, now obsolete.
I'm in the Manhattan directory. I'm sorry, I don't show anything listed under the name Little, Little, Egypt.
The switchboard operator. Switchboard operators were the only ones who could connect you with a person on the other side of the line. They worked behind huge boards, connecting people by plugging and routing wires to the desired destination. Oftentimes, if you were about to make a long-distance call, even across town, the operator served as a link to the conversation. For instance, in large organizations, hotels, or hospitals, switchboard operators played a crucial role in communication. Called somewhere that was closed, an operator would promise to leave a message for you. Make an ordinary call and have the other party pay? Well, that's all right, the operator will sort it out. But as time went by and technology grew, the world stopped seeing the need for the human switchboard.
Advance reservations and the fastest, friendliest service. So don't worry about missing the movie you want.
Video store attendant. If you're someone who spent their childhood in the 80s, there's a chance you spent weekends at the video store, going through racks of plastic boxes and approaching the rental attendant to seek advice. If it were a new release on VHS or extending to other sections looking for hidden gems, the store clerk was always there. They didn't only assist in getting the perfect movie for that weekend, but also looked over more functional aspects like rewinding tapes, checking for damage, and collecting overdue fees. Working in the video rental store was a dream come true for many teenagers. It was more than working, it was an experience, as clerks would learn the preferences of customers. The advent of on-demand streaming made the need for video stores obsolete.
Good morning, Sonny. Is your mummy in?
Encyclopedia salesman. As much as it sounds odd today, in the 1980s, encyclopedias were a surefire way to know that one had some information well in reach, day or night without getting into an online search. Many homes had encyclopedias, and they were sold at the doorstep. In the early 1980s and later decades, people earned money by selling encyclopedia book after book to families in large suburban areas. When families were buying the Britannica or World Book Encyclopedia, it was considered a costly undertaking, an expenditure that was aimed at education. These, however, faced disappointment starting in the 1990s with the rise of the internet, particularly the advent of Wikipedia. As a result, many advertising-related occupations saw a decline, especially in sales, with door-to-door sales being hit the hardest.
The customers will look to the bank to handle for them everything from the most unusual transactions.
Professional typist. Professional typing services were dominant in most offices until the personal computer became available. Typists had to prepare typed-out documents in different forms. Business correspondence, legal documents, and even research reports were all done by these people on their typewriters, and sometimes on a word processor to ensure that nothing was left out. In smaller offices, only a few typists were able to work with dozens of secretaries, and in a large firm, entire pools were utilized. Often, they were women who were arranged in rows with each one busy at their machine taking dictation, typing documents, or copying things to the typewriter. There was a need for speed and perfection, and typists of this caliber could produce page after page in minutes.
Agree with Dr. Masters.
There's a new survey that's just been published by the Department of Health.
Film projectionist. Even watching films in theaters didn't limit itself to what was seen on the screen. It was an event, and in charge of every movie screen was a professional film projectionist. They were essential to the work of ensuring viewers never encountered interruptions in their enjoyment of the film. Projectionists had the task of expertly attaching huge reels of film to the machines and then threading them through elaborate mechanisms of gears and spindles, putting the film on clearly without interruption. Dealing with film was challenging. They needed to properly time the inclusion of different film reels, manage the equipment, and take care of the fragile stock to prevent tears, jams, and burnout. On top of that, every so often, problems arose that needed quick troubleshooting, even if the start of the movie was to be restored on time. An occupation that entailed not only practical talent, but also a thorough knowledge of the ins and outs of the apparatus. The majority of projectionists loved the art of movies and thought of themselves as the overseers of film watching, even though they were never visible.
We'll come back soon and then we can all run away with Thomas Cook.
Nobody knows more about holidays than Thomas.
Travel agent. Until the internet had made it possible to book a flight and hotel or vacation by sitting at home, you had to rely on a travel agent. In the year 1980, people sought the services of a travel agent to arrange vacations, trips, and honeymoons. There were certain privileges like flight information and accommodation details which were beyond the public's reach. Travel agencies handled every aspect of a trip, including booking travel, hotels, cars, and even scheduling sightseeing. Being the best agent in the business, they had a good rapport with several airlines and hotels and were able to make suggestions while providing clients with some discounts.
And even some emergency and local calls. But it comes down to
Telephone answering service operator. In the early 1980s, calling through a telephone system was the rage. One could hardly find an answering machine in any home or office, and that's where the telephone answering service operator emerged. These operators were employed by companies that offered call answering services for their clients' businesses or individuals. They handled messages if a call wasn't attended, providing information and a few directed suitable calls to another number. These services provided answering that was indispensable for smaller companies and professionals who couldn't turn off their phone even while not in the office. They worked around the clock so no call went unanswered, and messages were always distributed on time. And every client and customer appreciated a real person on the other side of the line who was willing to assist. Newspaper layout designer. In the age when technology began to flourish, newspapers were not only written, but rather well illustrated. They were made by well-trained layout artists. These artists had to cut and paste every news, photograph, and advertisement on every given page of a newspaper. Using old-fashioned technology, they designed everyday papers that millions of people consumed. And every designer wanted a paper that had beauty and functionality. The job was quick-paced and challenging because you never knew when changes would come, and every composition had to be perfect. Bank teller. When somebody wanted to deposit or withdraw money or perform any minor banking operation, you had to speak to a teller. Bank tellers were the most visible representatives of banking, and the most personal services were offered at a local branch. You went to the teller when cashing your paycheck, opening an account, or needing any kind of service. They counted cash and checks, dispensed out money, and took deposits while performing many other activities for banking operations to run smoothly.
Dear, we're all out of toner. Well, what about
the one downstairs? The man will be here next Thursday.
Carbon paper copier. Back in the 1980s, when modern photocopiers and printers had not yet been invented or made readily available, many workers made use of carbon paper. It was commonly used for copy making. You simply inserted it between two sheets of paper, and whenever the top layer was inscribed or typed on, the weight and pressure exerted by the stenciling process imprinted everything on the other sheet underneath. It made for an automatic and ready-made second copy. Such a process was extremely common amongst business order processing, business payments, and formal agreements, and it was available in most working areas. Bowling alley pin setter. Bowling is a fun game that everyone enjoys, and every strike worth its name came with a pin setter back in the day, the person who would reset the pins at the end of the alley. This was before things like mechanized pin setters, where the job was done by part-time teenagers who would reset the pins after every 2 throws. They'd be stationed at the end of the lane where the pins would be knocked down, and with quite some swiftness set them back up and distribute the ball to the player. This became a collision course of high adrenaline and energy working environment. However, it could also be dangerous. By the 1980s, almost every bowling center installed automatic pin spotting machines, therefore absorbing the job of the pin setter.
Photocopy ready. The paste-up man can go to work.
Print shop worker. If somebody needed flyers, brochures, or business cards, they'd go to the nearest print shop and meet capable people operating large and noisy machines that produce the materials of professional quality. Print shop workers were involved in the entire process, from installing the machine, the ink and paper, up to the delicate management of printing itself, to achieving clean and faultless prints. They were in large demand not only by companies, which required an easy and sophisticated way of producing bulk printing, but also by individuals. The work did pay well, but it took a long time, and one small error could end up being very expensive.
Check the customer's purchases accurately, ring them up correctly, and collect.
Checker at the grocery store. Every supermarket had in store a group of people called checkers who rang up a customer's purchase. The position required speed and morality, since grocery store cashiers were the last point of contact before a customer left the building. Such a duty was important, and most stores had very long lines of cashiers during peak hours. The job of the cashier was not only to ring the groceries, they were also there to interact with customers, put on a smile, and converse with regulars. As time went by and technology improved, self-service and automated checkout systems emerged in the early 2000s.
A currency dealing desk, surrounded by the dealers of the other currencies.
Stock trader. If it was the 1980s and you wanted to buy or sell a stock, you'd not use an app. Instead, you'd call a stockbroker. This was because stockbrokers were expert middlemen between investors and stock markets that placed orders for them. They provided counsel, performed analysis, and made recommendations for specific stocks depending on market conditions and the target of the client. One simply couldn't be a stockbroker without knowing the market inside and out and keeping clients close while at the same time making instantaneous decisions. Brokers would take calls from clients, enter orders manually, and work with a network of contacts on the floor to get the best price. They were regarded as the stock market's gatekeepers, since most people simply couldn't walk in and sell or buy shares without first calling a broker. That changed with the introduction of online trading in the early 2000s, and platforms like E-Trade, developed applications like Robinhood, made it possible for anyone to do their business without a broker.
The oldest projector in use on the 2 screens here dates from the 1940s, and it's still going.
Projectionist at the drive-in theater. Drive-in theaters were an integral part of the cultural landscape in the 80s as a means of watching movies out in the open air by stealing the serenity of the stars. At the center of this was the projectionist, who handled the film and the projectors, keeping the process of screening films on the large outdoor setup in motion. Projectionists were the practitioners loading and threading film and focusing the image. They also had to cross to the next reel while the movie was still playing. Drive-ins, once omnipresent as cultural symbols, have all but vanished these days, most of them having already shut down due to the prevalence of the multiplex. The demand for drive-in theaters has lessened, and also lessened the demand for the projectionist. There are still a few drive-ins that operate to this day, but the figure of the drive-in projectionist has perished with time, drawing a line under the age of portable cinema.
Will be serviced, so the last thing you'll ever have to do is worry. US West payphones.
Coin collector for payphones. Payphones were once a common sight on every street corner, in the mall, and in public buildings, and maintaining them meant that someone had to collect the change that was deposited for a call. A job held by coin collectors. These workers traveled from one phone to the next, unlocking the boxes, getting the change, and ensuring the phones were operational. A routine job that was essential to keeping public phones functioning. The rise of cell phones in the late 90s and early 2000s meant the end for payphones, as mobile technology became widespread and they became unnecessary. With the near extinction of payphones today, the job of the coin collector has also vanished.
That's why American business needs 36 million telephones, more than all the phones.
Cold calling sales representative. Businesses used to rely heavily on cold calling sales reps to reach potential customers. With nothing but a phone and a list of leads, they would call people at random, trying to sell products or services. Cold calling was one of the most effective methods of direct marketing of the time, but it was also difficult and intrusive, with reps often facing rejection and frustration from the people they had called. With the advent of digital marketing, social media, and data analytics, cold calling as a sales technique began to decline. Companies could now target potential customers through more sophisticated and less invasive methods like personalized ads, email campaigns, and online tracking. Today, cold calling is rare, and the role of the traditional cold calling sales rep has been largely replaced by automated and targeted marketing strategies, marking the ending of an era in sales.
Information is sent electronically to similar units around the corner or around the world.
Data entry clerk. Offices were once full of data entry clerks who were responsible for manually inputting large amounts of information into computer systems. Whether it be for payroll, accounting, or inventory management, data entry was essential for maintaining accurate records in a lot of industries. Clerks would spend hours typing information from paper documents into computer databases, a tedious but necessary job to keep the business going. As software evolved and automation tools and advanced database systems reduced the need for manual data entry, and by the 2000s, programs could extract, organize, and input the data automatically, making the role of the entry clerk far less common. Today, many businesses use cloud-based systems and AI-driven tools to handle large volumes of data, eliminating the need for dedicated data entry staff. What was once a cornerstone of office work has now been streamlined out of existence by modern technology.
Well, I think it's very hard to tell about.
Library researcher. Before the internet and Google became the go-to source for information, library researchers were essential in gathering data. These researchers were highly trained in locating books, periodicals, records, and more, and whether it was for a legal case or an academic paper, even a report, the library researcher's job was to sift through endless archives, reference books, and microfilm to find the needed information. Researchers had an intimate knowledge of how to navigate card catalogs, reference systems, and library databases, spending hours or even days pulling together sources for a project. Their expertise became invaluable as they knew where to look for hard-to-find information and could make sense out of vast amounts of data. With the explosion of the digital database, online libraries, and search engines in the late 90s and 2000s, the role of the library researcher faded away. Information that once took days or weeks to find could now be accessed in seconds through a simple online search. And today, Google and similar tools have replaced the need for dedicated assistance, making the researcher's role a relic of a pre-digital era.
Card accounting is simply a matter of letting machines shuffle the papers.
Key punch operator. Before the age of personal computers and modern databases, large companies, government agencies, and research institutions employed key punch operators to input data using a punch card. They operated special machines that punched holes into cards to represent information, numbers, letters, and codes. They were then fed into early computers for processing, making key punch operators a vital link in managing data for everything from payroll systems to scientific research. Key punch operators had to be fast and accurate because errors could lead to problems when the data was processed. They worked tirelessly, often putting in hundreds and thousands of cards a day, a highly specialized role that required focus and precision. However, as modern computing systems evolved, key punching became unnecessary, and the advent of keyboards, disk storage, and digital data entry in the late 80s meant that data could be input directly into a computer without the need for a punch card. Which of these jobs do you think you'd enjoy if they made a comeback? And if you like this video, you'll also want to see this one about the most dangerous old toys that are now banned. Be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.